Hello Power Rangers fans and welcome back to Toku Topics. Today I'm here to talk about HasLab yet again. So a couple of months ago I did this video about HasLab right after the Black Series Rancor failed and the G.I. Joe Sky Striker funded. And it was kind of just a time where everybody was talking about HasLab and I was kind of thinking like, you know, what are my opinions on HasLab and what they could do for Power Rangers? And I think that video did pretty well. I'm still pretty happy with how that video turned out, and I still agree with pretty much every point that I said back in that video when I made it in December. However, recently HasLab has been kind of back in the news, or kind of back in the forefront of everybody's minds because of two different campaigns for two very different reasons. So right now we had two Hasbro HasLabs going on at the same time, kind of like what happened last time with the Proton Pack, Sky Striker, and Rancor going on at the same time, but a little bit better. Sort of. So this was the G.I. Joe H.I.S. tank, which is still going right now for the Classified series, and I actually backed that, so which is surprising. It's the first time I've ever backed a HasLab campaign, so I did pre-order a H.I.S. tank. However, we also had another HasLab campaign, which was the Reva Black Series Force Effects Lightsaber, which hilariously failed, like pretty badly. And so we're still at the same point as I was back in December, where we have still never had a Power Rangers HasLab. G.I. Joe has now had two, one for their retro line and their 6-inch line. Of course, so has Star Wars for like their vintage collection and their 6-inch line. Marvel hasn't really done anything else besides Marvel Legends, but that kind of makes sense. And yeah, we just don't have one for Power Rangers. And recently I was kind of thinking about, realistically, what would they actually do for a Power Rangers HasLab? And I might have cracked it. The Power Blaster. Now, before you guys talk about, but yeah, they're already doing the power weapons in the Lightning Collection in the main line. And you're correct. But I started thinking about this more, and I briefly mentioned the Power Blaster back in my video in December, and I rewatched through that clip today, and I talk about how the Power Sword had the listing and the Power Lance had a listing. Now that was 4 months before they revealed the Power Sword and 5 months before they revealed the Power Lance. And now we actually are starting to see these items actually released out to the public. We actually have some photos and videos of the Power Lance shipping out from Big Bad Toy Store here in the US, and the Power Sword is about to release in the UK. So we are starting to get these weapons actually released, you know, to the public and everything now. And there's still no indications necessarily if they're going to go all out and actually make a Power Blaster. But I kind of brushed off the idea of a Power Blaster in my HasLab video back in December, but I was thinking about it more recently, and I'm like, I don't see them releasing all 5 of these weapons at mass retail because of the fact, think of the price point on these things. The Power Sword is supposed to retail for $220 and the Power Lance for $130. Both of which very pricey already. Kind of understandably so, I suppose, in sort of somewhat reasonable ways. That, you know, these are very big weapons and they have lights, they have sounds for some reason. But like, when you think about this, how would they realistically release a Power Axe and a Power Bow in a retail line like this? If we're already charging $220 for the sword, how much would those two things cost? And would there be a demand? I personally don't think that these weapons are going to sell very well, the Lance and the Sword. They already kind of aren't. I know a lot of people have canceled their pre-orders. I know a lot of people never even pre-ordered the Sword. I'm going to be honest, I haven't either. I'm going to buy these weapons because I'm a Lightning Collection completionist, but I don't have either of these things on pre-order right now because I kind of want to wait for a sale. And I know that's kind of a bad thing because that will hurt the sales of these, and I think it'd be absolutely awesome if we got a full Power Blaster someday. Like, that would be really cool for a number of reasons, but like, how would we get that, right? The Power Daggers, I think, are easily a weapon that could be made at mass retail for significantly cheaper, or at least I would hope so, than the Lance and then the Sword. I could see maybe the daggers costing like $100, which even that is a lot of money, but like, I don't see them charging less than $100 for the Power Daggers. But like, also they're going to probably make those light up and have sounds and everything too. Now what's really interesting is I think Hasbro is building towards a Power Blaster. They do reference a Power Blaster in the product descriptions for these weapons, but more of they just talk about these being Power Blaster weapons and not really talk about them building towards one. And they've also been very specific on which weapons that they have been releasing. The Lance and the Sword don't have any actual recognizable pieces that they would need to combine into the Power Blaster. The bow would have to have that. It would have to have the little notches or some sort of something to connect the Lance and the daggers to the bottom, and the actual axe would have to have the connector port for the bow and for the sword. So they've been very specific, and also just by the way that these are designed, to not seem like they are, you know, trying to build to that if they never get to it. And that's where I think HasLab would come in. I personally think that a good choice, and I still don't know if it would succeed. In fact, I think it probably would not. But I think that a good possible choice or a good possible prediction, kind of a classic Hasbro move, honestly. Because everybody's talking about what they would want for HasLab. This Megazord, this figure team pack. I personally want Dark Spectre to be a Lightning Collection HasLab. That's what I really would like. You know, a big figure like the Galactus or like the Sentinel that they made, that kind of stuff. But I could totally see Hasbro going, hey, we're going to sell you the Power Bow and the Power Axe at HasLab. Now, I don't know if these would be like bundled together if they would ever decide to do this for a HasLab. I really don't know exactly how they would market it, because I think that the bow would be probably like at least 300 because of how big it is. But then again, like, I don't know. Like, would you include the whole string on it? Would you include an arrow for it? Because you wouldn't need those for the Power Blaster. Would they be evil and make those like stretch goals for the bow? The axe, you know, is big. It's very simple, but it's big, and like if the sword, which doesn't do anything besides light up and have sounds for some reason, is 220, the axe is probably going to be like, what, like 350 or something? Maybe you're probably wondering, would they really want to lock in the last two pieces as a HasLab thing and risk the thing never happening? Well, they could. We've already seen some sort of connection between retail items and HasLab items with the HasLab Ghostbusters Proton Pack. So the Proton Pack explicitly said that it wasn't coming with the wand that extends off of the Proton Pack, you know, kind of the thing you would want it for. The wand was sold separately at mass retail. What was very interesting and kind of dumb is that one of the stretch goals for the Proton Pack was the actual hose piece to connect the wand to the Proton Pack. Pretty much the only thing you would actually want the two things to have together. They had you have to unlock it by having a lot more backers, which they did. They did get that backed and they did get that funded. But that kind of tells me that Hasbro is absolutely not past the point of deciding to lock essential features of combining things together from retail items and HasLab items together. So it could be even possible that like the Power Axe and the Power Bow would be like a base set together or something, or maybe they'd be two separate HasLabs, which would be dumb, but maybe. I'm assuming that these would be together. Or maybe the bow somehow comes out of mass retail and the axe is all that's left. Basically, I'm assuming either both of these or one of these could be a HasLab weapon to finish this off. They could literally make, like, you know, if it's the arrow, they could make, or if it's the bow, they can make the arrow and the string stretch goals like I said earlier. If it's the axe, they can make, like, connector pieces or something as stretch goal, which would be really weird and really dumb. But I could see it happening. And basically, just the longer I thought about this, it was more like, maybe they would actually try this for HasLab, because I think we don't have a Power Rangers HasLab because I don't think that they know what would actually have a good chance of backing. Power Rangers fans would back a lot of different types of HasLabs. I know a lot of fans really want team packs for HasLab. I think that's a terrible idea because I hate the idea of them, you know, thinking of a figure to like show us that they might do, and then it doesn't back and we never get the figure ever. That's always my biggest fear of HasLab, is seeing these products never happen, because it does happen sometimes. Star Wars has had 2 failed HasLabs in a row. If Star Wars can't do it, I don't know if Power Rangers even has a shot. So I definitely don't want figures to be locked in this. But realistically, if we somehow got weapons as HasLab and they never happened, I'll be disappointed, but like, I'd rather them not have, you know, I'd rather not have a missed opportunity to get a figure than a weapon. Now, I think also you could still argue that like, if we never got a full Power Blaster, hey, maybe you at least have 2 to 3 weapons that you got out at retail, and those are still nice display pieces and everything, and oh well, we never finished them. That's a shame. I know a lot of people would want them to be finished, but also I think if we do a HasLab 2, they could also kind of, you know, try to back it and be like, you know, the better it does, you know, we can actually sell more of the swords and the lances and stuff like that. Maybe wait a little bit to where people are not buying those, kind of use the HasLab as sort of a, you have to like promote that to make that succeed, but you also use its possible like goodwill to try to get people to buy the other weapons that they haven't bought yet. It's a kind of a weird marketing tactic, but it could be something that Hasbro tries. I don't know. I just thought this was kind of an interesting idea that I kept thinking about longer and longer. And like, I don't see them making a HasLab that isn't Mighty Morphin related. And I know a lot of people make jokes about like, oh, you know, Lightning Collection Megazord at full scale or something, which would be absolutely impossible. I know people think of playsets a lot. I know a lot of people mentioned like Ernie's Juice Bar or the Command Center. And I think that those would be really cool, but we just haven't seen HasLab do playsets before. But of course they probably can. You know, they could probably do anything for HasLab. I just don't know if anything for Power Rangers would actually back. But I'd like to know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below, and by far, this is absolutely not a leak or anything like that for HasLab. I have not ever heard anything for even a potential idea actually from like a reliable source of them working on something for HasLab. They could, maybe they'll like announce something next month during August, but then again, they just don't make Lightning Collection announcements anymore. It's been 2 months since we've had one, so who knows? But maybe one day we'll get a HasLab, maybe it will be a Power Axe, maybe it'll be a Power Bow, maybe it'll be some kind of combination of both, maybe it'll be something completely different. But I would love to know down in the comments below, what would you actually back for a Power Rangers HasLab? Do you like this idea of these weapons potentially being HasLab items if they wanted to go that route? Or would you like to see something else? I'd just like to know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Have you ever backed a HasLab? Has there ever been one that you've been tempted by? Or just the high prices of these and the big scale of these kind of turn you off to the idea of them? Or just the whole idea of the whole process in general turn you off? I just want to know. So until next time, you guys can find me on Twitter at LivingRangerKey or LightningPR, and I'll see you all next time.